Did you see the stylish?
Welcome to the Young IPA podcast. I'm James, this is Pete.
G'day, everyone.
It is episode 126 and it is the 12th of September. Big show coming up. We are going to be talking to Tim Wilson, Liberal MP. I was not there for that interview, but Peter was.
Yep.
Where was I? I was at a wedding.
Yeah,
so,
you were at a wedding.
Tell us about the Tim Wilson interview.
Yeah, well, James wasn't there to supervise, so a bit of freestyling from myself. But
I was so worried the whole day. I'm like, what's Pete got in him?
Yeah, no,
Anyway.
well, you still haven't watched it, so no, it's pretty good. A bit of IR, a bit of Brexit, a bit of optimism, and he also told us about this thing that he has to do that you wouldn't expect an MP that has to do, but it's amazing that they do have to do it. And listen up.
Very good teaser. I'm very excited to watch this. And we're also going to be talking to Jacqui Munro. That is Pete and I will be talking to Jacqui Munro. Jacqui was influential in Keep Sydney Open when it just started, which is the anti-lockout laws campaign group. And they've had a big victory this week with the announced repeal of the lockout laws. We'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah.
We also got a whole bunch of other topics. So Gladys Liu, the Victorian anti-discrimination bill, heroes and villains. We've got the quiz, a whole bunch of fun stuff at the end of the show. Anything you're looking forward to, Pete?
I'm looking forward to the quiz. It's a ripper.
Yeah. All right, Bella going for the triple crown.
That's right.
She's won two in a row. She's going for a third.
She's unbeatable.
Yeah. Well, we don't know that yet.
Yeah, we don't
know that yet. We don't know how it goes. Let's get into it, Pete. So tell us about where the lockout laws are in New South Wales right now.
Yeah, look, I'm glad to start with a good news story.
Yeah.
You know, this is a victory, and we'll speak to Jacqui in more detail about it later. She's a freedom fighter. Good on her. We saw on the weekend New South Wales Premier Gladys Liu announced over the weekend that she plans to scrap or repeal Sydney's lockout laws in the CBD while still leaving them in place in King's Cross, the mighty Cross, where, you know, I've done some of my best work in the Cross, so it's a shame that the laws still apply there. Anyway, Sydney's
You'll
lockout...
be back. You'll be back for a repeat effort.
Yeah, the Cross will be back. Anyway, Sydney's lockout laws, among other things, meant venues were not allowed to let patrons in after 1:30am and not allowed to serve drinks after 3am. So that's that.
Right when the night gets good.
Yeah, or bad, depending on how you look at it. But basically, that killed nightlife in the CBD and King's Cross, as we've seen. Now, I should point out at this stage, it's a very vague announcement. We're going to do. It wasn't specific. It's not actually a law yet. She's just.
But it is the best news that this has had in years.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. And the inquiry. So they've got an inquiry going on about these lockout laws, which will hand down its report on September 31. Now, So we'll keep you up to date with how that actually ends up. What this reminded me of, though, was the Transport for New South Wales ad, which was trying to flog Sydney's dying wildlife.
Nightlife, not wildlife.
Yeah, good point. That's why we keep you around, James.
Thank you.
Which was famously cringeworthy. So I'll just get Saul to run the tape now.
Hey, my name is Jaden Rodriguez, and I'm a singer-dancer. I love finding new places to keep my friends and I entertained. So we're going to hit up Haymarket and check out some of the city's coolest spots that the whole crew can enjoy. So let the games begin.
Yeah, let the games begin.
So that was the famous ad where their whole nightlife was they went 10-pin bowling and then watched Aladdin and got ice cream, which was like, fun night out. What are you going to do for the next 364 nights?
I don't know if it looked like it was that much fun, but I mean, look, it could have been fun going to the movies.
So the people you're with.
The narrator goes on to say, for me, the hardest call to make was to have one choc top or two.
That is a hard call. That's a hard call.
Pretty wild. I should point out, just before we move on, that the IPA, of course, played a massive role in preventing these similar laws from happening in Melbourne. Tim Wilson was front and centre of this. For those watching on YouTube, we're going to throw up a photo of Tim Wilson with a megaphone looking like a feral hippie protester, except for the fact that he's got a suit on. Anyway, we'll talk in more detail with Jacqui Munro about that.
Yes, absolutely. The only things I had written down for lockout laws here were there's still a long way to go and that lockout laws suck, which I think we hit on both there.
Yeah, that's good.
All right,
Good summary.
All right, so let's talk about anti-discrimination laws. So this is something that Fiona Patten, who is a Victorian MP with the Recent Party, has introduced. Well, she's brought it before Parliament. They haven't had a vote on it. We don't know how it's going to go, but if Labor says that it's cool, then...
That's how Parliament works.
Yeah, that's how Parliament works. Is it cool? Yeah? All right, passes. It'll be coming in power. So basically... It is 18C on steroids. So it's like the racial and religious tolerance bill to provide protections for people vilified on the basis of gender, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or sex characteristics, outlawing actions that are likely to incite hatred or severe ridicule. And I guess it's like that old thing of who do you trust to decide what you can and cannot say and what you can and cannot hear. And Victoria will now have an answer to that. It is a judge that wasn't there when it was said and doesn't know context and doesn't know backstory and doesn't know, where everyone stands on something. It's just we'll outsource it to a judge.
Exactly right. And look, my thing about this is that Fiona Patten, right? She introduced this bill. She used to. What's happened to her? She
Yeah.
used to be so cool.
That was like the big libertarian hope in Victoria for
Yeah.
a couple, like for a red hot minute.
You know.
It was, we're finally in.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
won. The sex party, that was
Yep.
cool. Now it's called the Reason Party, which
Well,
is like nowhere near as fun.
Yeah, it's not as fun. It might be taken a bit more seriously, but it's definitely not as fun.
So anyway, what's happened to her is my question about this.
Yeah, so pretty terrifying bill. Like any expansion on stuff that restricts freedom of speech, the IPA is obviously going to be quite against that.
Exactly
And Morgan Beck got a lot of press out of saying that it's 18C on steroids. So yeah, well, hopefully Labor says that's not cool as its official parliamentary terminology.
Yep.
And but if it does, obviously we'll be talking to someone closer to it.
Exactly
That's
right.
a wild story.
That's right. And one thing I did like about Morgan Begg's media release on this, or his comments in the Australian, I should say, was that he said this repeals 800 years of rights that human beings have had since Magna Carta. And it's like, I just love the historical context.
Yeah, that's the Morgan Beck touch. What he's referring to there is the Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission's power to apply VCAT to compel people to produce any documents as part of the case. Like, you just have to hand over anything they think is interesting to your case, which is pretty scary.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of pretty scary, third story I want to hit on
This is a
was
good
something
one.
out of the Bolt Report last night. So, inferior interviewer, if I might say, but
Yeah.
it was a pretty good interview. So, Gladys Liu, Liberal MP, newly elected MP from Chisholm in the last election, she was on Dad's show, and Dad had a few searching questions for her because there's a whole lot of questions about her ties to the CCP and a few of these other organisations. So just a few, I'll hit on a few and then we'll play a clip. So a few ones. Dad asks if China's President Xi Jinping was a dictator. Doesn't have an opinion. Were you a member of all these organisations that are backed by CCP? Don't remember.
I can't recall.
Including memberships that were like 10 years long. Whether or not she agreed with her government that China's theft of the South China Sea was illegal, she wouldn't. But to me, bad look, but this look was the worst, if we can go to that clip. So.
Yeah.
Do you consider Xi Jinping a dictator?
Well, honestly, I have been focusing on serving the city of Chisholm, and that's exactly what I've done since the election. I only had 1 day off in the last 3.5 months.
I love that. I haven't had a day off, all right? Like common day off tasks, like do laundry, pay bills, reflect on whether or not China's a dictatorship.
Yeah, catch up on dictators.
Hey, that's a catch-up thing. That's a catch-up thing. I'm not going to do that right now.
Yeah, so that was an interesting response from her. What I did, my favourite part of this, though, was your old man's reactions.
Yes.
Genuine exasperation.
Yes.
So,
He's got that. I also like, I don't remember is such a perfect excuse.
Yeah.
It's just like, it sounds bad, but if you don't remember, no one can say anything. It's like, well, don't remember.
Yeah.
There's nothing for anyone to work with.
Yeah, you can sort of maybe speculate that she can remember.
You can speculate, but you didn't give it away.
I've tried to don't remember a few times and it's not worked for me.
Oh,
so,
really? Well, you didn't do it as consistently and on as many grounds as Gladys Liu.
That's right.
So, wild interview. That's getting a whole lot of coverage
Yeah,
today.
it'll continue to be big, that one.
I think so. The new Sam Dastyari. Potentially the biggest Sam Dastyari story.
Maybe we should interview her. We haven't interviewed Sam Dastyari.
We did, yeah.
So we'll put that on the list.
Yeah, that's on the to-do list. Right after reflect on whether or not Xi Jinping's a dictator.
Yeah.
All right, let's head over to the heroes and villains segment. So, this is... Oh, here we go. Yep, that is the snort of freedom. That is the... so these are things that we have seen of people standing up for freedom against tyranny, and it's the Grunt the Pig Freedom Award.
Yeah.
So, Pete, your nomination.
Still trying to arrange an interview with Grunt. We'll keep you posted on that. My nomination, really, really pumped about this one, as I usually am actually, Ringo Starr.
Yep.
Former drummer of the Beatles.
They're not playing a whole lot of live shows anymore.
One of my favourite bands of all time. Doing the rounds this week, this interview he did where he gave his support for Brexit. Now, the keen-eyed watcher might notice we actually used the same footage that I'm about to show you later on in the quiz, but we actually recorded the quiz a few hours ago, which gave me the idea for my hero, so we're not cheating. Play the tape.
The people voted and, they have to get on with it. Now, suddenly it's like, oh, well, we don't like that vote. And what do you mean you don't like that vote? You had the vote. This is what won. Let's get on with it.
Would you have voted that way?
I would have voted for Brexit, yes. I would have voted to get out. But don't tell Bob Geldof.
Bob Geldof, if you're listening.
Sorry, Sol, do you like being talked to like that from Pete? That was such a disruptive play, the tape.
I was just authoritative, with authority.
Yeah.
Anyway, great job, Saul. Bob Geldof, if you are listening, apologise. You had to hear it this way. Now, this vid is actually from 2017, but for whatever reason, it's gone viral this week. He goes on to say, I think it's a great move. I think, to be in control of your own country is a good move. What a controversial statement that is. Now, it's racked up over 1 million views this week and was trending on Twitter. Some Remainers did respond to it as if it was current. Ringo, you absolute legend. You're the hero of the week.
That's from a Remainer. Oh, that's from Pete.
That's from me.
No one loves celebrities that aren't rabidly left-wing more than Peter Gregory. Like, you will lord any of them around the office. You're just like, how good's this? We found someone.
It's if I already liked them beforehand. Like,
And
I
you've got more
Ringo
reason
Starr.
to.
Yeah.
Right,
I knew he was a good bloke. Like, every time Noel Gallagher says something that's slightly not left-wing, I'll be like, see? I told ya.
All right, so keep them coming because they really make Pete perk up in the office. All right, so my hero of the week. So Peter Ridd is obviously a story that we've been following, and the Federal Circuit Court have announced their final decision on the Peter Ridd thing, getting paid $1.2 million in damages from JCU. He gets, Dr. Ridd wins this case on all 17 counts of the unlawful dismissal, which is such a big win for freedom of speech and academic freedom, and such an absolute loss for James Cook University. And suck it, is what I would say.
That's the official take. Suck it.
That's my take.
Personal
that's
opinion.
my personal opinion. And there's like this idea that JCU might appeal the decision. I don't know whether or not to do this or not because like it's even going to be worse for James Cook University, but obviously Peter Ridd has been through more than enough. So Peter Ridd, huge win for academic freedom, hero of the week.
Good on you, Peter. Good on you, James.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go over to villain of the week, which is the inverse of that. I think we got an image of Walter Peck from Ghostbusters, one of the great movie villains in history. Pete, so who did you see as a villain of this week?
Well, James, good question. My villain this week is the US Embassy in Zimbabwe.
Yep.
Last week, the ex-president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, died, thankfully. Now, the US Embassy in Zimbabwe tweeted out this message. The United States extends its condolences to the Mugabe family and the people of Zimbabwe as they mourn the passing of former President Robert Mugabe. We join the world in reflecting on his legacy in securing Zimbabwe's independence.
That's a hot take.
I don't think that quite captures it.
Scorching hot take.
That doesn't capture the whole story.
How does that happen?
I assume how that happens is they either just the PR kid, or the social media kid lost their mind, or they just thought we have to be polite because we're in Zimbabwe and we don't want to annoy people.
But look out the window. Like, I don't think there's a whole lot of people that are going to, be up in arms because the US Embassy is a bit critical of Mugabe.
The embassies are always in a pretty fancy part of town, James, so maybe they can't see what's going on. But for those who don't know, Robert Mugabe absolutely destroyed Zimbabwe. His thugs killed thousands, destroyed the economy, and sent hundreds of thousands into starvation. So that tweet was got rid of. What's it called? Deleted after a backlash. The State Department issued a follow-up, which the embassy retweeted, which said, we extend our condolences, etc., etc. Robert Mugabe helped liberate Zimbabwe, but his human rights abuses and gross economic mismanagement impoverished millions. Now,
that's a big but.
That's better. It is a big but. Yeah. What's with the liberate thing?
Yeah.
Like, taking a country from a bad situation and turning it into a Stalinist wasteland is in no way liberating.
No. If Zimbabweans could have their time back, would they go with it?
Yeah, well, yeah. Anyway, so, that's my villain of the week. I mean, Robert Mugabe would be a good villain, but
he's not here to accept his award.
Yeah, exactly.
So my one is the Town Council in Coffs Harbour in New South Wales. Jacinta Price, friend of the show, on her national tour talking about, what is it? Mind the Gap, Bridging the Indigenous Divide is the name of the tour. Such an awesome thinker, definitely someone everyone needs to hear from, but that is not the decision of Coffs Harbour, who have now said that Jacinta Price, if she is going to speak in Coffs Harbour at a hall that they booked out, Jacinta Price should seek permission from the Gumbaya Aboriginal people who, Coffs Harbour has a lot of Gumbaya people, and Jacinta Price, if she wants to speak there, she needs to seek permission to speak on those grounds. Coffs Harbour gets 1.6 million visitors a year. Like, how many of those have been asked to consult with the Gumbaya people?
Yeah, like none.
I would say so.
Maybe
the second
one,
Jacinta Price has views that the council doesn't approve, suddenly there's a few more hoops people need to jump through.
We always talk about we've got to hear more from Indigenous people. We always talk about we need to hear more people from women. Now, where are the people defending this Indigenous woman who's been told she needs to seek permission before she opens her mouth? This is an absolute disgrace.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are people obviously talking about this, and this podcast is now officially talking about this as well. But yeah, it is. How it's not like nationwide news is quite crazy.
It's outrageous. And I went and saw her address in Melbourne as part of her speaking tour. It was really good. Check it out.
Very good. And yeah, so hopefully if you are in Coffs Harbour and listening, you can one day be able to watch it.
Yeah.
All right, so that is it for the start of the show. We now got 3 segments in a row. So we're going to be talking... Pete is going to be talking to Tim Wilson. Got tongue-tied there. Pete is going to be talking to Tim Wilson. Then we got the quiz, and then we got Jacqui Munro, and then back to me and Pete. Is that right?
That's right.
Yep. You put together the run sheet, so I defer to you.
All right, here we are with Tim Wilson, member for Goldstein, Liberal MP and ex-IPA icon. Welcome to the program, Tim.
Thanks so much for having me, Pete, and thank you for pronouncing my electorate correctly.
That's right.
And thank you also for the tea.
No problem, mate. And we'll let you keep that mug at the end of the interview as well.
Can I take it to Canberra and fly it around Parliament House?
Well, that's what I was hoping. I was hoping that you'd take it up and maybe, we can give you one that can give to ScoMo and maybe one to the Greens and things like that as well.
Okay, well, so far you've given me one mug. You can give me a few more if you want me to do that.
We've got a few. Now, let's get into it. So you have commented a lot on the situation in Hong Kong and China. You've been a big commentator in the press and in social media and things like that. I noticed on your social media that you spoke with Denise Ho and the team from Australian Hong Kong Link yesterday.
Yep.
What do they want to talk to you about, and why is this such an important issue to you?
Now, what do they want to talk to me about? Unsurprisingly, they want to talk to me about the Chinese Communist Party.
Really?
And how they perhaps don't have the best interests of the people of Hong Kong at heart.
Really?
Funny that.
I find that hard to believe.
Oh, well, I'd be shocked as well. I mean, basically they wanted to talk about the consequences for the student protesters who were standing up and speaking out, how we've got to be very cautious at taking the CCP on their word about what they're going to do in Hong Kong, and to make sure that we're showing support for the protesters. And, of course, I have a lot of sympathy for them because in the end, Pete, you can't trust communists. And it's as simple as that. And there's always been that way because in the end, it's about consolidation of power for their own interests against the public. And they don't draw their legitimacy from the people. So that's what they want to talk to me about. And I've been vocal about this because apart from, being someone on the free market end and that not really being consistent with the red agenda, I think it's important to speak out because if you don't speak out at times when things progress, sometimes can get beyond the point where you can, and that's where I'm always worried we're heading because you see the expansion of the CCP's power over the region, and some of us want to make sure that at least we've stood up and said something at a time.
Well, that's great. I think that, you can't trust communists. We always have to find a pull-out quote from the...
Is that
when you go straight away?
Oh, that's good.
Kids listening at home, you can't trust communists. I'm glad you mentioned speaking up because one of the things to me about foreign policy is it's a very nuanced thing, right? And I find it difficult to understand because it's nuanced, and obviously I find that tough. But... So when you say someone like you speak up, an Australian politician, what kind of influence can that have on the situation?
Well, it can have modest influence, and it's largely about giving other people courage to stand up and speak out about these things. But in the end, when it gets to the realm of foreign policy, it's a bit more complicated because countries have different steps about what they can do. They can raise their concern and send a stern rebuke to a foreign government.
That's right.
And China does that to us sometimes, and we do it in reverse. Then they can take a heavier step, which is to cooperate with other countries to send stern words. Then they have to take. Then the next sort of step is sanctions. But after you kind of get past that, it can then turn into things like conflict, and nobody really wants to have conflict. We want countries to respect their citizens, treat them with dignity, and make sure that countries are free to be able to, people to be able to be free to live their lives. And so it's really about making sure that people know that the world's watching. And I think the world and the weight of the world has been sitting on the administration in Hong Kong about their behaviour, what they've been up to, and that if they overstep the mark, that the world will, speak out and take action.
All right, so just on that, we've seen in the last couple of days, Carrie Lam, the chief executive of Hong Kong, has pulled the extradition bill. What's your take on that, and what do you think is going to happen next?
So I'm cautious. People may forget now, but when the protests started emerging, they said, all right, we'll shelve it for the minute, or then we'll delay it, or we won't reintroduce it. And now they're saying, hey, we're actually going to pull it all together. But it's still evolving. I think let's wait and see what happens, because in the end, they tried to introduce this bill for a reason. And I don't think their reasons, their objectives have gone away. And people forget, we actually had a discussion around introducing an extradition treaty with China here in Australia. And some of us stood up against it then. And so our government has shelved it and put away. I think they've realised that there's, and particularly after Hong Kong, there's definitely no way it's coming back. Or if so, some of us will stand up again. But I don't know what to interpret yet of Carrie Lam and what she's saying. Beyond watch this space and don't be surprised, because the protesters had like 5 demands. This is only one of them. And the question is what will happen with the other 4 as well.
I do remember when this first started, we were talking about how it was, I think yourself, and was it James as well, James Patterson?
James Patterson, yes.
And a few others who sort of said, hang on, I'm not sure this is the best idea. So that's a really important development. So obviously, congratulations, Tim. Well done, mate.
Thanks for that. Well, we managed to save 3 weeks of demonstrations and various other things by doing Australia, but it was kind of James Patterson, Andrew Hastie, myself, and we were all, at the time, by the way, only just really elected. And so we were very new to the parliament. And it was kind of one of those times where you realised the power of being a backbencher if you just backed the courage of your convictions, and we just said kind of no. And I think history's proven us we've kind of been a bit right.
All right. Okay, let's move on to another international story, Brexit.
Oh, yeah.
So we're recording, this is actually going to go out next Thursday. We're recording this on Friday prior to Thursday, so forgive us if none of what we're about to talk about actually transpires.
Well, I'm just worried by this time next week we could have Boris Johnson as being the monarch of the UK. He could have resigned as Prime Minister. Parliament could could have been disbanded, and we could have an election. So any of those possibilities are realistic. So this is just the assessment now.
Okay, that's exactly right. This is the assessment now, and hopefully Australia's won the Ashes by then, but who knows? So Boris Johnson, overnight, for us, said he would rather be dead in a ditch than ask the EU for an extension. What are the paths forward for Boris in the UK?
Well, there are a few paths, but in the end, his game at every step has been say that we're not going to compromise and go to the EU and say, this is on you. You guys have got to give. Otherwise, we're out, regardless of the circumstances. And he's tried to maintain that, while the Parliament has undermined him doing that every step of the way and wanting to extend it. So what's his choices? He can, if he extends the deadline, the Parliament has said they'll vote for an election, but that then means that he'll go to an election. It'll be a binary choice between kind of the Tories and maybe the Brexit Party saying they want out, and Labor kind of flip-flopping all over the place, and the Lib Dems being the Remain people. So in that scenario, you'd probably say it'll bizarrely turn into like a Lib Dems versus Tories election contest. The Queen can, of course, always intervene and say, you've all been... I know there's a meme going around at the moment of James Bond and the Queen where she says, taking out the whole Parliament, ma'am, yes, 007. But I don't think that's a scenario. But the Queen at some point could turn around and say, this isn't working. That'd be pretty extraordinary.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing. But, she would basically have to... That'd be a pretty big step. Otherwise, they have this option of extending the deadline and kind of ambling on, and then going to the EU with this incredibly weak position where every time Boris Johnson makes a threat to the EU saying, there's a price to not doing a deal with us, the Parliament undercuts him. And I just think it's a disaster. You have a vote. It doesn't matter what your view is before or after. You have to honour the will of the people, and you've got to do what's in the best interest of the country. And I actually think the risks of a no-deal Brexit now are virtually zero, because the markets have priced the cost in. Most of and there will be some damage done from a no-deal Brexit. Companies will move, various things. I think most of those are laid plans or have done them already. So I think I should get on with it and get on to the recovery.
All right, so I'm going to ask you the question you don't want.
Yeah.
What one do you think will actually happen?
Well, I reckon on balance, the Parliament will dictate. That's how the system's supposed to work. They'll extend and they'll go to an election, and it'll be a fight between the Tories and principally the Lib Dems. Lib Dems will do well in London. Labor will do okay in some places but will struggle, and the Tories will be done It will do well. The question is, because the Scottish National Party will probably do pretty well. So you could end up seeing this kind of bizarre coalition government at the end of it. And I don't want to prejudge the will of the British people, but it could be really the most bizarre electoral outcome. And you could see the Labor Party smashed.
Yeah.
Which, I think we'd all raise a cup of tea and cheers to that in the very British way. But it raises some bigger issues about whether you'd have a majority government to be able to do the job it needs to be done.
That's exactly right. And of course, Corbyn being an especially bad Labor leader.
Especially anti-Semitic, especially socialist. We're talking about the CCP before. It'd be really bizarre if a democratic country voluntarily elected somebody who had sympathies with them and other like mind. Yeah, pretty bad.
Has he said anything about Hong Kong, Corbyn?
I don't know. I don't watch his daily statement. I don't. No, imagine that. I suspect not. He has a pretty patchy history.
Yeah,
on a lot of governments and totalitarian regimes. So I'd be surprised if he had.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So, look, you talked a little bit about the short term there. Now, Henry Ergus wrote in The Australian today, it's becoming harder and harder to believe that Britain will ever be the same again, no matter what happens with Brexit. Do you share that pessimism, or do you think the broadly long-term Britain will be okay or even better off?
I've always believed that Brexit will, if they deliver it, will leave Britain better off in the long run, but there's short-term pain. And the problem at the moment is the whole of the politics of the nation are being driven by one issue.
Yep.
And so I went to the UK immediately after, but then about a couple of months after the original vote, and it was really interesting. I went back last year, and the country basically hadn't moved on. And I was there this year as well, and the country still hadn't moved on from discussing it, because democracy isn't just about winning something. It's actually about the losers accepting the result and accepting that whether they agree or not, the process was fair, and the losers have never accepted the result. And so the whole of the nation has been binary on this one issue. Now, do I think there's a time after that? Yes, but will the Tories or Labor be the dominant party into the future? I don't think that's guaranteed. That's where I think the Lib Dems will be really interesting. But you could see if they don't deliver Brexit, the Tories, you could end up having a permanent fragmentation between the sort of Brexit party types and the Tory party, and it could completely reshape politics forever. Well, until another moment like this, and then it'll reshape it again.
Yeah. Until further reshaping. All right. Yeah. Well, we'll move on from Brexit. Let's talk something a little bit closer to home. You had a piece on IR in the AFR a couple of weeks ago with fellow backbenchers Jason Filinski and Andrew Bragg.
I prefer fellow troublemakers.
Troublemakers
and backbenchers.
Okay, yep. Troublemakers. How do you feel about rabble rousers? That because I was.
Not trying a bit. We're not a rabble.
Tim is not a rabble. Okay. So now, look, we like to talk about the IPA. We like to talk about the morality of IR reform, rather than we feel like free marketeers over the journey have too much gone into the economic benefits and stuff like that. Let's talk about the morality of IR. Do you think that we should do that as well?
I do, but I think you should take that approach to all economics. I know that when I hear this with something like a pet beef of mine, which is tax reform.
Yep.
And if you leave it to economists, they'll talk about efficiency. And it's like, nobody cares about that. The case for tax reform is that we need a more equitable system for intergenerational justice. We need reform because it enables people to be able to make more choices about their lives and be in control of their lives. We talk about sovereignty of nations, we should talk about sovereignty of people and their freedom and their choices. And the same is true in IR. When it comes down to it, it's actually about giving people the opportunity who don't have a job to get one, to understand and have the opportunity, the dignity of work, to support themselves and their families, and to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And that's what IR reform should be about. It should actually be about improving the opportunity for the unemployed to get jobs, for people to move between jobs, and for people to be in the best wicket in their life and live a fulfilling, happy life.
Exactly right. Okay, so look, there's probably a million things you want to do about IR.
There's a million things I want to do about lots of things.
Yeah, I'm sure you've got big plans. If you could do one thing about IR, what would it be?
One thing. I think more, and if you read the op-ed, where our focus was principally on is saying, let's look at the basic benchmarks of the current IR system. It's supposed to make it easier for people to negotiate on wages, make it easier for people to sign up to enterprise bargaining agreements, make it harder for people to, do the dodgy on an employer on a short-term benefit for things like unfair dismissal. And it's failed on all those pathways. But I just think the most basic thing is you should enable people to be free to contract as the basis of any good IR system. Have your protections if that's what people want to do, but that'd be pretty big. The other big thing would be to say that workers should be free to choose who they put their superannuation with. Because I just think it's just fundamentally wrong that big corporates and big unions collude together to undermine the freedom of choice of an average worker who just wants to be able to, get a job, earn a wage, and be able to decide how to, save for their retirement.
All right, so people should look out for that in the coming months and years. Now, let's get on to your demeanour, let's say, or just your overall world view.
Right.
You strike me as an optimistic character.
I am.
You have a couple of hashtags on your social media. The future's going to be awesome.
Yes.
And constant victories. Why don't you explain those to our listeners if they don't know, and explain why you're optimistic?
So, constant victories is a mindset thing, which is just about the idea that you've got to look for the good in everything, and you've got to build as part of the theme, because so much of life is about attitude.
Okay.
I just never cease to be amazed that people get, in the doldrums, and yes, people have, serious mental health or have genuine mental health issues. But most things are about how you look at them. And if you look at life as winning and as opportunity and moments to be seized, and that's what constant victory is about. It's about being upbeat. And the future is going to be awesome is specifically about why we should be optimistic about the future, because I can't stand how people always talk about how we're going to be poorer in the future or less well off, or the environment's going to be worse. The evidence just doesn't bear that out.
Exactly right.
There are so many books that have been written about this, but none of them are bestsellers. Doom and gloom sells, division sells, optimism and hope doesn't. And so the future is going to be awesome. It's just like every time there's something really cool about like robotics or the health of the environment, it's getting better, we just post it out and say the future is going to be awesome and try and build up that sense of optimism. And so that's ultimately why I'm optimistic, because as the world gets richer and technology progresses and society improves and people realise more of their ambition, things get better. And I just look at most of the challenge and go, can we solve it? Yes. Is technology largely going to help improve the world? Yes. And so you're looking and go, okay, well, there's plenty of indicators to be optimistic. The only basis of pessimism is because people want to use that as a justification, normally to drive their centralist controlling agenda to try and dictate to you how to live your life. And, they have a lot of that in common with the CCP.
There you go. Exactly. That was a great speech. Fantastic stuff. All right, now
you're a charmer, Pete.
Well, that's what they say.
I'm not sure who they are, but
just the characters in my brain. No, so let's go a little bit behind the scenes, because people love to hear the behind the scenes from politicians.
Yeah.
What's the best part of being a politician, and what's ScoMo like?
So the best bit about being a politician is when you're in Parliament House. I know this is going to sound really dicky, and kids from schools come and visit you. I reckon it's awesome because you kind of get to see after they've been on like an 8-hour bus trip, but you get to see their eyes come alive and kind of see what the point of Parliament is and democracy, but also they're excited to see you because, you're their guy or gal in Canberra, and I love talking to them. They're so much fun. And then you ask them to ask questions, and they'll ask the... kids don't have much inhibition, so they'll ask you questions which no adult in their right mind would ever ask you, and so they're fun to answer. What's ScoMo like? So ScoMo's kind of like...
I know he's your boss, but,
Well, no, the people of Goldstein are my boss.
Sorry. After them.
But after them, he's the man in charge. What's he like? He's pretty firm. He's pretty straight, I've found. And so you can go and talk to him and he'll give you pretty much a clear sense of what he wants and why he wants it and where you fit into it. He likes a glass of red wine from time to time, but he's pretty measured. He's kind of like the responsible uncle in the family. And, that's probably not a bad place to start for a leader of a country.
That's right. That is a good spot. All right. Now, I want to ask you one more question before we finish up. So now one of my colleagues here at the IPA, Hugh.
Yeah.
Now he met his wife not through you, not through Tinder,
No.
not at the pub, and not through you, but you and your husband Ryan actually set them up.
Yes.
And now they're married.
Yeah.
If this politics caper doesn't work out for you, would you think about a matchmaking business.
Absolutely.
Something
No,
to look into.
but I'm not sure that it's that efficient these days because you've
Okay.
kind of got technology apps where people, what are they, left and right swipe or?
I'm not familiar.
No, you're not familiar?
No, it's
no
left and right.
judgment.
Yeah.
I kind of got into a relationship before all
Yeah.
this stuff came out. So I remember back like when you did this stuff on computers.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas now you just swipe left and right, but I don't know which one's which.
Yeah.
So we've removed the middleman.
Yeah.
From setups.
Oh,
So I don't know if me trying to introduce myself into a broker into another person's relationship.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the most efficient way to get outcomes.
So you've been disrupted by technology.
I-
Unlucky. Can
No,
happen.
well, no. Actually, I'm amazed at the number of people now, and I even have this like mums of constituents who ask me to set up their kids.
Really?
I'm not joking.
So like you don't know them.
I've met them and
Yeah.
I'll have a conversation and I'll say, do you know any good girls or, or boys or whatever else? And it's like, okay, this is a new dimension to what it
Yeah.
means to be a member of parliament. They sort of say, well, you see the whole community.
Yeah. So politicians have to deal with a lot of issues, don't they?
That wasn't what I was thinking of adding to the list when I was elected. But, you'd be surprised. Sometimes find people along the way and just say, well, you never know.
Oh, really? So you've actually sort of connected a few people up.
We've just at times provided an avenue where if they want to meet people, then we can have them connect. But it's up to them whether I'm not going to get involved.
Well, folks, if you're out there, if you're lonely, if you want to meet someone, email Tim at his electoral email address and he'll sort it out. Tim, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thanks, Pete.
Welcome back to another round of Hey, What Did We Miss? The Young IPA quiz. We have a absolutely loaded quiz today. So we got Dr. Bella DeBera, two-time champion, going for a third.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Good attitude. All right, Director of Communications, Evan Mulholland. He has been pumping his tyres up all week. He thinks he's going to come in
I thought I
win.
walked in here for looking forward, and now I'm in the quiz.
Yeah, and then Pete, Roof Seal, thank you for dressing up for the occasion.
Thanks, mate. Today's my day.
For the people that are looking at home.
Today's my day.
All right, so Evan, you are new to the program, and so just in case you haven't seen, or if there's anyone watching at home or listening at home that hasn't seen, so 1 point for any correct answer, 1 point for an incorrect answer,
Negative
1 point off for an incorrect answer.
Yep.
And the buzzers are your own first name. So Bella,
Bella.
quick buzzer check. Yep, Evan, like it. Jeez, that was intense. That's a man
That's
that's
really
come
intense.
to
He's here to win, mate. His job is IPA
really is.
spinner. His job is to keep charge of the media,
Look, if
so he
anyone knows
knows.
the news, it's Evan.
Yep.
I
And
forgot
me.
to draw up a scoreboard, so thank you for padding
That's
for
what,
me.
that's what Bob was doing just then.
Yep, and
Roof.
roof. Okay, cool.
As in the
All right.
famous advertisement.
So, do we have any more questions? There's going to be 9 questions and then a who am I at the end. We also have an audio question, which Saul has been working away at in the studio.
Yeah,
So thank you
Musker.
very much to Musker. All right, so question 1. The police expected 10,000 protesters in the CBD on Friday night for Extinction Rebellion.
Oh!
What's the answer?
What's it?
Geelong, Collingwood.
No, that is
MCG.
That's not.
What was the
See,
question?
You've
Roof,
come in
roof.
very roof.
350.
No, that's incorrect as well.
Oh, how many actually rocked up?
Well, who knows?
Bella.
Bella, do you
it was
want to?
cancelled.
150.
Well, the answer was going to be what was the closest number, how many turned up closest to gets it, and that was Bella because 100 people turned up. Sorry, Bella off into the positives. And
There you go.
man, the early buzzers, they give and they take it away.
Well, I knew the question, I just didn't know the answer.
All right, well, so thank you for chiming in.
Well, I
It's
didn't know.
not
I didn't know-
Jeopardy. You don't win points by guessing the question.
I didn't
It's
know.
just the
I didn't
answer.
know the answer until you said it was wrong.
All right, okay, so second question. How much money did Dr. Peter Ridd receive?
Bella.
I think Bella?
Bella, yeah, Bella's
yeah.
1.2 million.
1.2 million is the correct answer from his legal battle with
Here we-
James Cook
here we
University.
go again.
All right,
Here
Bella,
we go again.
Bella's secret is incredibly quick
Yeah.
buzzer and knowing I don't really punish people for taking too long with the answers.
Hey, I said the answer really quickly.
You did that time.
She knows the answers and she answers quickly.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
the key.
All right, third question. Which state is at the center of the Trump versus CNN?
Roof. Alabama.
Alabama
Yes,
is the
Alan.
correct answer. All right, so score check. Bella is on 2, Peter is on 0, making up that negative,
forgot
and
I got
Evan
one
is on -1.
Oh no!
I was like, yes.
I know.
We've never had someone finish in the negatives before, so Evan and Roof Seal,
I'm sure we can.
we're getting pretty worried.
Come on, spinner.
All right, next question. Which battle happened on this date in 490 BC that spawned the name of a track and field event? Pretty good question.
Good
am I
question.
right?
Good
I like
question,
that
James.
question.
Wow.
So,
Track
battle
and field event.
490 BC.
Roof.
Marathon.
Marathon.
Correct.
Oh, good.
I'm
Battle
actually disappointed
of
I took
Marathon.
that long to get that one right.
Yeah.
No,
So like the
What else would it be?
the battle of the 100-meter sprint.
Yeah.
not going well.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So Rafael Nadal just won the US Open. How many Grand Slam tournament wins does this make?
Roof.
Bella.
Roof.
19.
It is correct.
Oh my God.
Tate is.
But Bob's giving me
this could be
two
it.
small ones.
This could be it.
What is it? Are we 2-2 now?
It is 2-2 and then -1. Oh, no. I'm not going to lie though. I back Evan in the Who Am I? Just as a little teaser.
Ooh.
There you go. So you can still win a lot.
Added pressure. Oh, we're coming up to the audio question. So, all right. So this is the audio question. Which British rock star from the 1960s came out in support of Brexit this week by saying this? Oh, just let me throw to it. You can come. You've got it after we throw to it.
The people voted, and they have to get on with it. Now, suddenly it's like, oh, well, we don't like that vote. And what do you mean you don't like that vote? You had the vote. This is what won. Let's get on with it.
Okay, Pete, give it to us.
Ringo Starr.
Ringo Starr is correct.
Boom.
That is another one for Pete.
I recognise that voice from the Thomas the Tank Engine cartoons.
Very good point. Yeah. Okay, next question. So, which proportion of the Australian workforce are members of a union? Closest to it gets it. So, closest to it gets it.
14%.
Is it private sector workforce?
This is all workforces.
13%.
14, 13,
15.
15. Bella gets it. It's 14.6. 14.6.
What are we doing? Decimals?
Yes, we are.
Oh, no.
You got that last time, remember? You got
No,
14
the private sector workforce is like 8 points.
It is. But unfortunately, no points for Evan. All right, sorry, score check. Pete is on 3. Bella is on 3. -1, Evan.
Did you take a point off for me?
Sorry?
Did you take a point off for me?
No, it's as close as 2 gets it. So we're all good.
Okay.
I'm the genius here. I think this is going to come down to another Pat Hannaford Hail Mary 5-point guess, and we'll see what happens. But anyway, we'll see what happens.
Oh my
all right, this is one of my favourite weeks of the entire year. The NFL football has returned.
That's just we need to get Bella off the show. Let's just do.
Bella's just going to have a quick nap while the rest of you name 3 teams.
From what, sorry?
Just name 3 NFL teams.
Roof.
Roof.
Buffalo Bills.
That's 1.
Green Bay Packers.
2.
New England Patriots.
No, yeah, sorry, I thought you said New York for a second, but no, that is correct. Pete's got it. All right, sorry. What fraction of the House of Commons does Boris Johnson need to be able to call an election? Bella?
2/3.
2/3 is correct.
I knew it.
Yes. All right.
See, she's quick.
So,
she's very quick.
Who am I? 4 points for Pete, 4 points for Bella, -1 for Evan. We could have a 3-way tie if Evan gets the 5-pointer.
Then
And here's the thing, I haven't got a tiebreaker question.
We have no infrastructure for a tiebreaker.
So, Evan, while it would be awesome for the show if you got this,
Can you not?
don't get it.
We'd have to make
Okay,
something up.
who am I? I celebrated my 68th birthday on Monday.
Oh my God.
All right, think out loud. It's better for an audio
That was
format.
me.
if you think out
That was
loud.
me thinking out
68th
loud.
birthday
Evan.
on Monday.
Evan,
He's going to get it. He's going to tie it up.
this could be it. I'm so prepared for this to be
Bill
it.
Clinton.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Evan. All right, 4 points. I first entered Parliament in 1984. Any takers?
Oh,
You can come back
Parliament.
in. Sorry? Well, no, what
Don't
did
you
I
allowed to
say?
say Parliament.
All right, 3 points. I led my party for 7 months across 1994 and 1995.
Evan.
Oh my God.
Alexander Downer.
It is Alexander
Oh,
Downer.
well done.
Sorry.
Oh, no,
still a
now we're-
tiebreaker.
it's a tiebreaker.
It's still 4-4-2. So I don't have any backup questions.
Why don't we
Should you
just
just-
declare us both winners and
No,
come back both
we need
in?
one winner.
Because he
I
needs to be
specifically
back.
said in the email that 3 would enter and 1 would leave, and I need 1 to leave.
Well, could you think of a question or something?
How about a rock, paper, scissors tournament? That's what they usually do.
I've got a question.
Okay, Evan's got a
Okay.
question. All right.
Oh my God.
It's precious.
Oh,
So
no.
tense. Pressure's also on Evan.
Yep. Who spectacularly overnight announced their resignation from
Bella.
the UK Parliament?
Oh my God.
John Burkow.
All right, Bella's got it. 3-time champion. Bella wins
What is
again.
that, Evan? I thought where did Melbourne finish in 1987 would have been appropriate.
Who top scored the Ashes? Pete would have been all over
No,
it.
I was very lucky with the questions there, so I think Bella deserves her 3rd victory in a row.
Yes, very good. All right, sorry. 3-time champion Bella taking on all comers. Thank you very much to Evan and Pete for playing along.
Getting better.
And-
Yeah.
All right, cool. And we'll do the quiz again next week.
All right, I'm here with Jacqui Munro, anti-lockout law campaigner in Sydney, to tell us about what's going on up there. Jacqui, welcome to the Young IPA podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
So it looks like there's been a big change to the lockout laws this week. Why don't you tell us what's happened and how you've been celebrating?
Well, I wouldn't get too ahead of ourselves just yet. The government hasn't quite announced a particular change. The Premier has indicated that she would support the repeal of amendments that were made to the Liquor Act and the liquor regulations, but it's been pretty light on detail, except that perhaps King's Cross would still remain lockout affected.
That's a shame because I've been across a few years ago before the lockout laws and it was quite a place. So that's a shame that that's the case.
It does seem like a bit of a strange exemption practically, but we'll see how that actually is rolled out because there are a number of nuances that were introduced in relation to the lockouts, things like bringing out ID scanners for venues that may be addressed or may not be addressed. So I think a lot of the devil will be in the detail, as we will hopefully hear more about in the coming weeks from the government.
Yeah, because one of the things I've been seeing in a lot of reports is the idea that it's definitely going, like, I think it'll stop lockout laws in the CBD. Like, what are the things we do know so far?
Well, honestly, we don't really know all that much. I mean, the lockout laws really encompass a few different aspects of legislation. So it's things like serving drinks as well as who is permitted to enter when they're permitted to enter. And it really is entwined with not just liquor regulations, but also planning and development consent regulations. So there's quite a lot of detail.
Nice one. So, Jacqui, we heard rumours from one of our friends here in the IPA headquarters that you're a bit of a party animal. Now, what impact did the lockout laws have on Sydney's nightlife?
Well, a lot of my friends are involved in Sydney's nightlife in various ways,
Okay.
from being people who run clubs and run events to musicians, whether it's electronic musicians and DJs, to playing in bands, jazz groups or rock bands, to sound and lighting engineers. Really, a lot of industries were affected by the imposition of the lockout laws. And then, of course, all the patrons who like to get out and meet their friends or make new friends when they're out on the dance floor. And really what it meant was a huge shrinking of that economy and their jobs and the opportunity for people to go out as they chose to enjoy themselves.
Yeah, I know we are light on details at the moment, but you think about how many people have been affected by that, and we finally had the government sort of even suggest they might move towards repealing the lockout laws. This is still a pretty huge week, right?
It is definitely a big week, and there has been a lot of celebration because of that. People are really sharing a lot of articles on social media and congratulating a lot of the people who are very involved in the advocacy. And I mean, even at the state election, of course, we saw that the Keep Sydney Open political party did quite well in their upper house run. So there's a lot of political activity around this, but I think it is important that we don't jump the gun, because it's one thing to remove the lockout laws, but it's another to actually reinvigorate the nightlife so that we do have a thriving nighttime economy and that the offerings in entertainment don't just plateau, they're actually increased. And the government really has a role in encouraging that, I believe.
Yeah, so let's assume that the lockout laws gets repealed to the extent that its CBD businesses don't have lockout laws anymore. Maybe King's Cross does still have lockout laws, and there's a few other areas as well. Would you sort of see that as this is as far as the government's willing to go on this issue, or do you think Gladys and maybe the Liberal Party are quite a bit more open to the idea of repealing further lockout laws, or is this sort of just like the least they can do to stop this being an issue?
Well, I think there's a really interesting difference in this review of the lockouts to the review that was conducted a couple of years ago by Ian Callanan. And to me, that has to do with the involvement of members of parliament, because Callanan was an independent, outsider. He wasn't an elected representative. But now we have an inquiry that was run by members of parliament who really have a vested interest in keeping constituents happy and really listening to the concerns of people in their electorates and also, I guess, in a broader sense, so that their political parties are electable in the future. And so that's why, for me, it's really important that we don't jump the gun in celebrating, because there really is a lot more that needs to be done. And we need to continue to apply that pressure to say that the introduction of the lockouts, it happened very quickly and it was quickly destructive. And to address that, we need to put in that extra action that will enliven the city and the economy.
One of the things about this whole campaign which struck me as interesting is that it probably brought together people from different parts of the political divide, and probably brought together people that were not that interested in politics in general. It's sort of a thing for libertarians and liberals that the nanny state can do that. It can be a kind of gateway drug, if you will. Is there any? Can you see any positive flow-on effects from that campaign for maybe attracting a few more people to that kind of liberal libertarian outlook?
I think that's a really interesting point, and I think it is something that really goes to the heart of why the lockout or anti-lockout movement became so successful in bringing lots of people together who weren't necessarily traditionally involved in politics. And to me, that's why the government has to do more, because politically, I mean, I'm a Liberal. I was the Liberal candidate for Sydney in the federal election this year, and I really see that political involvement as people thinking that the Liberal Party didn't represent what they were supposed to, essentially, that Liberals and libertarians are pro-business and generally pro-freedom. And people weren't seeing that from the government that they had elected. And so there was a real disconnect between what people thought the Liberal Party should be doing and what they really were doing. And to me, that is what generated a lot of activity. And it's not just Liberals and Libertarians who got involved. There really were people from all sides of the political spectrum who put their voices to this. And I think even the fact that there was a Keep Sydney Open party created, which is something that I found a bit opportunistic, I guess. For me, it wasn't the right way to go about things, and I wrote about that. But it really showed that people were willing to get involved in the political system in a way that they hadn't done before. So politically, the Liberal government has a real opportunity to enfranchise the public and enfranchise young people who are involved in these nighttime economy communities and these creative communities by supporting their activities rather than demonising them, really simply because they happen in the dark rather than in the day.
Yeah, it is always refreshing to know that no matter what side of the political divide you're on, no matter what we fight about in the daytime, everyone wants to party. So I was going to say, like, what are the other... so Keep Sydney Open, which you were a part of, was so influential in bringing these people together. Do you reckon there's any second, another nanny state idea that this sort of coalition can go after next?
I think the timing of this inquiry has been interesting. There are two somewhat related inquiries happening at the moment. The first one is an inquiry into the music festival amendments that were brought in with a view to restricting the licences that were granted for music festivals around New South Wales. And there's also the New South Wales coroner's investigation that's going on into deaths at music festivals. And I know that there's a lot of overlap in terms of the people who want to feel safe and want to, have access to those places in a safe manner in the way that they choose. And that perhaps may be something that Keep Sydney Open decide to pursue in the future, is going outside of Sydney and going into perhaps more regional areas where often those music festivals are held.
Yeah, cool. I got one more question for you. So let's say the lockout laws do get repealed and Sydney's nightlife does start to get back on its feet a bit and people are out and about. Sydney siders have really only had the lockout laws to blame as for reasons why, Melbourne is better than Sydney for partying. So has it been like a discussion about what other excuses you guys are going to have to rely on?
Good question, James.
Absolutely brutal. Well, I think there is absolutely no doubt that Sydney beats Melbourne, even in the Safe Cities Index that The Economist released this week. We beat Melbourne even then. So
I got to say, if you're gonna throw The Economist at us as a reason why Sydney's better, I think we just win by default.
We do have a lot of work to do to ensure that we get a lot of that creative spirit back into Sydney. But of course, as a former candidate for Sydney, I can only extol the benefits of our beautiful harbourside city and the global nature of it as well. There's no better place.
All right, Jacqui, thanks so much for joining us. We'll end it there, and hopefully we'll hear again from you soon.
Thanks so much for having me, James and Peter.
Okay, thank you too, Jacqui Munro. All right, let's fly through some stories that made us laugh this week because I think we're running a little long. So let's start off with Extinction Rebellion let themselves down, Pete.
Well, I like to call them the Stinky Rebellion because it sounds a bit like Extinction.
That's what puts our podcast above the others. It's that kind of witty banter.
Probably needs a bit more work, that one. Anyway, so The Age last Friday night in Melbourne said police are expecting up to 10,000 protesters, mostly students aged 20 to 25, to meet at the State Library of Victoria on Swanston Street about 5 p.m. before they separate and meet at a series of undisclosed locations to block foot and road traffic. Now, obviously, last Friday night in Melbourne was the big footy game, Collingwood versus Geelong, one of the finals.
Like 90,000 people were attending the game.
Exactly right, 93,000 people.
Non-AFL people.
Yep.
If you're a rugby person, you're not used to the ideas of crowds. 93,000 people went to this final.
Whack. There you go. There's been a lot of Melbourne-Sydney banter on this show. But anyway,
and I like it.
Extinction Rebellion promised a powerful, fun and peaceful disruption. Now, the one thing you don't want to do is get in the way of Victorians going to finals footy.
No.
And Deanna Vonich...
It's the worst thing you can do.
Exactly right. Deanna Vonich, friend of the show and IPA staff member, said, I hope these... This is on the IPA chat. I hope these protesters don't get in my way on the way to the MCG tonight for their own sake. She did a laughing face emoji, but she was just covering her tracks.
Deadly seriousness.
So, unfortunately for
I was next to her when she wrote that, and her eyes had completely dilated. Like there was no pupil left.
Exactly right. Now, unfortunately for Deanna, it was reported the next day that only 100 university students and others swooped on the city for the protest. Now, I'm no mathematician, James, but 100 is 1% of 10,000. So
yes, it is.
Yet another climate change prediction that hasn't quite come true.
Oh, it's a zinger. Yeah. Extinction Rebellion, like these guys are just like the perennial protesters.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if actually 10,000 people tried to stop the horde of Collingwood fans going to that game? Well, it would be the end of days. Like there would have actually been blood. Yes. I'm not even slightly kidding. There would have been blood.
Yeah, exactly. And their aim is like, this will make people support our cause.
No, it will not. This will make people bleed.
Anyway, fortunately, we have to imagine that because it didn't happen.
Yes. And I just want to read out, so this is without notice, but my favourite sentence from the article is a quote from Siobhan McGlynn, who was one of the protesters. And here's her quote, and then what the next sentence was. We have to stand up, make a fuss, annoy the hell out of them until they change, until action is made. The group dispersed after about 30 minutes. How's that committing? How is that commit?
Yeah, the world's going to end, and we're going to give it 30 good minutes.
I'm going to give it 30 minutes before it gets a little chilly, and I'd rather be inside.
Yeah, and check what's happening in the footy.
Yeah, exactly.
Deanna would have been better off being held up by protesters, I reckon.
No, she's a Geelong fan. Mm. Oh, is she Collingwood or Geelong?
Geelong.
Oh, interesting.
Who lost?
51 points. Ooh. All right. Next story is Monopoly.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So Monopoly have been tweeting a lot of Monopoly spin-off games, I guess, in an effort to get in the news. So there was Socialism Monopoly last week. This week was Miss Monopoly. So it is like a Monopoly to celebrate women and to give them an advantage in the game. Instead of getting $200 when you pass go, they get $240.
Ooh,
and instead of investing in railways, I think you invest in things that women invented, like Wi-Fi and chocolate chip cookies. I think the two of them. So weird. And it's got a media, and it's just like, oh, is this good feminism thing? I'll say this. This is 100% a decision by men. That whole, $240. That men.
Well, the key with that is that blokes get 200 and women get 240.
Yeah, blokes get 200, women get 240. Everything else stays the same except the things.
Yeah.
100% a decision by men.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's all I had for this. How funny is that?
Yeah. I'm just more like, you couldn't do a single thing more to undermine women than to give them special help.
And here's the extra little bit of money.
Because you need it.
Because you definitely need it.
Just like I said last week with UTS.
Yes.
Really gets my goat, James.
Yeah, well done, Pete. All right. So
I don't mind the invention stuff. If you want to have women's inventions, that's great.
Yep.
But you know.
So 200 versus 240.
Give me a spell.
Yep. Spell you shall have. All right. Let's talk about Trump rallies.
Well, this is really good because CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, they always complain about how Trump accuses them of spreading fake news, and then they do something like this. So a study came out in March on the effect of Trump's many campaign rallies around America and their correlation with hate crimes.
Yeah.
Now, this was done by 3 professors at the, what am I looking at here? The University of North Texas and Texas.
AM.
And it was absolutely, AM.
Yep.
Good. That's good for you.
A&M, not Texas AM. It's not a university you go to directly in the mornings and then go to Texas PM in the afternoon.
Well, these guys look like they clocked off at lunch because they reported a 226% increase in hate crime incidents in counties that have a Trump campaign rally.
Yeah.
And this was breathlessly spread throughout the media by the likes of the Washington Post, CNN and Vox. Now, Reason, an organisation we love over in the United States, tested this data and released it this week, and they found that if you tested this data on Hillary Clinton's campaign rallies, hate crimes increased actually by a bit more.
Yeah.
And it's like, gee, that's weird. Let's look into this a bit more. Now, what the researchers had done is that they compared counties that had a campaign rally with other counties that hadn't. However, rallies tend to happen in counties that have lots of people, right? Because that's what they want to happen. And now crime happens more in counties with more people, including hate crimes. For example, Orange County in California had 2 Trump rallies and 5 hate crimes, but there's 3 million people in that county. Another county.
That's actually a remarkably low amount of hate crimes. Like 5 out of 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
wild.
exactly. And in the, Orange County in Indiana, there was 0 Trump
What are
rallies.
Orange counties?
There's
Sorry.
at least 2.
There's at least 2. Which is 2 more than I thought. No, I knew there was 1. All right. I'm interrupted.
There was a Trump rally in
running long.
Orange County, Indiana, which had 0 rallies and 0 hate crimes, but there's only 19,000 people.
Right.
So, I mean, that's absolutely basic research skills, right? And you know, a cursory check by a journalist would have seen that it's, you know, bogus.
Yeah.
Yet they didn't do it.
But you wouldn't have got as many clicks
Wouldn't have got
you
the
didn't
clicks.
write the article. So, yeah, that's what you're saying, is that the journalist got a sniff of unsubstantiated study, went with it, and didn't do the research.
Don't cry about being
Wild.
accused of fake news.
Wild.
Yeah.
We should do this. Like, we should just fake a study and
it's
see
been
if it
done.
goes viral. No, like you and me. Like, we should think of one.
Okay.
Like, Trump rallies are correlated with crop failures.
Trump's a racist.
Like, in counties where there's a Trump rally, they can't get apples to grow. Like, we'll just see if that takes.
Yeah.
Like, they're criticizing John Bolton getting fired despite, like, hating him for years.
Yeah.
They'll go with anything.
So unstable.
Yeah. All right. So I'm putting that on the to-do list.
All right.
What was the other thing we had on the to-do list? Get Gladys Liu in for an interview and then fake an academic research paper.
Yep.
I reckon we'll do both of those by next weweek. That's one thing we do.
I'm going to say we're going to do neither.
All right. So last thing we've got here. So Swedish scientist Magnus Söderlund is speaking. He's from the Stockholm School of Economics. He is speaking at a gastro summit. The panel talk is, can you imagine eating human flesh? And what he does is raise the prospect of cannibalism as a solution to climate change, which is interesting.
It is interesting.
So the idea being like, if we need to eat meat, why don't we just eat dead meat, which is humans? And then people are like, what? And it's gone viral. So someone's like, so would you eat human flesh? And he goes, I feel somewhat hesitant, but to not appear overly conservative, I'd have to say I'd be open to at least tasting it. He suggested more plausible options such as eating pets and insects. Much like Extinction Rebellion, if that's your solution to solving climate change, like, who are you winning over?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a few things I've got here. One thing, I want this man followed home.
Hang on.
I want this man put under quick surveillance.
Hang on.
Well, I'm just saying. So, like, all right. So this, I don't know this guy, but if your solution to if your solution to solving climate change is eating human meat,
Yeah.
I think you started at eating human meat and worked yourself over to solving climate change rather than solve climate change with like, well, as much as it kills me to say, human flesh.
I think we're going to have to say allegedly.
Allegedly.
With that, just to make sure we're clear of the legals.
Yeah, but like, come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so imagine being in the lift with him afterwards as well. Like, you just see this guy, you have a talk, you're like, well, that was wild. And then you get into the lift and you're just alone with this guy going up to the hotel room. You're like,
this could be it.
That's good. This is it.
Yeah. Well, we saw the other week.
That's a self-climate change.
Yeah. We saw the other week, Newsweek did that article about cannibalism. So this is the second one.
Cannibalism is getting a lot of play.
This is the thing.
All right, cool. That is it for the show this week. Thank you to Tim Wilson and Jacqui Munro. Make sure you're telling your friends and family about the show. We're available on all podcast platforms if you are listening through Apple Podcasts or iTunes. Make sure you leave us that 5-star review. We now film the podcast as well, so go over to the IPA's Young IPA Podcast new YouTube channel. So it's a new YouTube channel, Young IPA Podcast. Subscribe to that. You get all of the shows, all of the interviews, all of the segments. So do that. See you guys next week.
Tell your mates, see ya.